In today's news, researchers have predicted we'll run out of fossil fuels in the next 5 years. In the programme today, we'll be discussing how we got to this tipping point and finding out how we are going to cope in the future. We go now to our economics correspondent Alex for more information.
Thanks, Jenny. This graph shows world population since the 1800s, and as you can see, population has grown exponentially since the peak of the Industrial Revolution. Evidently, energy demand can only ever rise with this population growth. But questions start to emerge about how exactly we're going to meet the energy demand from our current non-renewable supplies. As can be seen from this graph, the use of fossil fuels has increased with population, as has renewables, but at a much lower rate. As recent predictions stand, fossil fuels are due to run out within the next 5 years. This dotted line indicates where we are at present. Therefore, in order to supply our current energy demand within this time period, it is paramount that renewable use increases significantly. However much these statistics shed light on the situation, they do not define how exactly the deficit is going to be tackled. There have been barriers that restricted our potential energy supply from renewables. So let's go over to Ben to find out your opinions.
We're coming to you live from Cornwall, where we've been finding out your opinions on renewable energy sources to see how we are going to cope in a world without fossil fuels. We asked what renewable energy sources you use at home, in your businesses and in your daily lives.
Solar power. The solar panels we have on the roof power or contribute to the power required for the hatchery. I think they were used because they're relatively easy, relatively cheap. I think we got a grant to put them in.
We don't use any renewables, no.
What renewables we use? We don't really. I don't know what we're getting from the national grid that's renewable. I know Cornwall has a lot of renewable energy.
We then asked people which renewable sources they don't agree with, why, and the incentives that could be put in place to solve our energy crisis.
I don't mind the solar farms and I don't mind the windmills. I just wish they were proved to be as effective as they claim they are.
I think some of the solar farms do look, for people living close to, they do look, they look really ugly.
I'm quite up for most renewables, just on a sort of logical sense that it would be better than using stuff that isn't going to reproduce.
We just haven't got the capital.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Okay.
We're also of the age whereby we wouldn't get back the investment we have for putting in, say, solar panels on it.
Plus we've got a big family, you know, and whatever spare money we have tends to be for our grandchildren and children.
I'm not a fan of the 7 barrage scheme.
Is that we are big supporters of geothermal because it gives you a very big base load.
We looked at solar panels on some of our buildings before, but it just didn't quite sort of stack up, and it was a bit of a question mark over how reliable they would be.
I think it is financial, because for us it would be more financial.
We think they're good things at the moment, although we don't understand them.
Yeah.
I think they are a good thing.
Yeah.
If they can be made more efficient.
I think solar panels should be put on the roofs of houses and not in fields.
The feed-in tariff did quite well for solar PV, and I know they cut back the sort of rebates that you could get, which may have put a few people off.
So what I suggest is, if you want to make renewables interesting, find a way of including sex and food, and it will win every time.
You have to make it more accessible, you have to make it slightly cheaper and easier to do, and probably massive financial incentives from your electricity bill. Even the most unlikely people can be persuaded, but it comes down to a financial thing.
We then asked some renewable energy experts about how these barriers can be overcome.
I'd say to them that there's lots of hassle-free ways of getting your energy sorted.
If they knew the full facts, they'd quite quickly make time and prioritise it as something that they would want to do. So we'll always find a way to help people make it work financially.
So we're offering government funding at the moment that allows people who have affordable houses to get things such as loft and cavity wall insulation fully funded.
It is dependent on what technology you're looking at. You know, solar panels have come down probably threefold in cost from they were 5 or 6 years ago.
Feed-in tariff has enabled people just to talk about the financial benefits.
Technology improving to make things more aesthetically pleasing, cheaper and shorter payback time.
We know from polling that most people find wind turbines entirely acceptable, but there's a very vocal, very small minority that make a big anti-noise, and they get all the attention.
Wind turbine is a lot more aesthetically pleasing than a coal-fired power plant.
What we need to do is make sure that the systems, the technologies, the industry is solid enough that people just, their first choice is renewables rather than going for any other
form of heat and power.
And so part of our job is to try and educate a wider range of people to say, actually, some of this is quite simple, and it's not really new fancy tech that's going to let you down, but it's actually quite tested and proven and something that you can rely on.
It's got to become the norm as opposed to something that people are doing outside of the norm.
We've heard your opinions on renewable energies, some barriers and how they can be overcome. Is it time renewables became the norm rather than the alternative? This has been Ben, reporting from Cornwall. Back to you in the studio.
Although this is a fabricated scenario, fossil fuels are due to run out in the not too distant future. Renewables need to be established as the norm and not the alternative in regards to our national energy supply. We need to evoke a cultural shift in sustainable thought, starting with small steps to instigate a chain reaction. Personally, I have taken away 3 behavioural changes from this video. I want to encourage my family and friends to have renewable consultations, to spread the word of these viable options on Facebook, Twitter and social media. But mainly as a student, I want to try and bridge the gap between the academics and the public. If everyone in this room had 3 ideas, then that would be 3 times the amount of actions that would be at the forefront of creating change. Cheers to that.